Okay, it's the last leg. Our final speaker focuses on human irrationality and uses science to identify the behavioral tweaks which can lead to the biggest impacts. He is a professor of psychology and behavioral economics at Duke University and the founder of the Center for Advanced Hindsight. Dan Ariely's best-selling books include Irrationally Yours and Predictably Irrational. Now, I don't even think that I'm predictably irrational, but I have to just let you know, Dan, that we are both Taurians, and we both have a warning today to expect an awkward experience. Please give a rationally enthusiastic welcome to Dan Ariely.
Thank you. Good morning. So first of all, I should point out that the reason that I have half a beard is not because I lost a bet. It's because I was badly burned many years ago, so much of my body is covered with scars, including the right side of my face, in case you were wondering. So I want to talk a little bit about behavioral change today. And when it comes to behavioral change, we often think that the right thing to do is just to tell people what they should be doing, right? If somebody is not behaving in a way that we think we should, they probably just don't have the right information, so let's tell them what the right thing to do is, and then people would immediately go ahead and do that. Is this the case? Let's reflect a little bit about our own behaviors. So if you don't mind, I'll ask you a few questions. How many of you in the last month, and please be honest, how many of you in the last month have eaten more than you think you should? Just kind of a general statement, okay? How many of you in the last month have exercised less than you think you should? Okay. How many of you in the last month have at least once texted while driving? Please be honest. Okay. I know some of you just don't drive, so you say, oh. How many of you in the last month have at least once not washed your hands when you left the bathroom? It's interesting, right? You say, oh yes, I text and drive, but I'm not willing to admit that I don't wash my hands. Two more questions. How many of you in the last month have not slept enough? Everybody? And last question, how many of you have ever had unplanned, unprotected sex? Wow, that's amazing. Very few. I'm impressed. Okay, so for most things, we realize that knowing what's the right thing to do is no remedy, is no guarantee that we'll actually go ahead and do it. And what that means is that when we think about behavioral change, we need to take different approaches. And what I want to do today is to kind of get you to think a little bit about social science and about experiments as a way to kind of get better foundations on how to get behavioral change. How do we get people to save, exercise, take their medication, care about the planet, and so on. And I'll give you a couple of examples. So let's start with example one. Imagine that we want people to save for an emergency, what's called rainy day. In this case, we're talking about some of the poorest people in the world. The experiment I'll tell you about we did in Kibera, a slum in Kenya. People live on, let's say, about $10 a week. And we want these very, very poor people to save a little bit. This is not for retirement, it's for a rainy day. And why do we care so much? Because the very poor have negative income shocks multiple times a year. And what happens when they have a negative income shock is they have no extra money. Imagine you're very poor, you live hand to mouth, you have no extra money. And one day, something bad happens. Maybe you have a goat, and your goat gives you 20% of your income, and one day the goat is sick, and maybe you are sick. Or maybe something happens, you have no extra income. You have no way to make up this gap, you borrow. In Kibera, you might be borrowing at 10% interest a week. And then let's say 4 weeks later, things improve. You yourself get healthy, the goat is healthy again, but now you're 4 weeks behind plus interest. Really hard to get out of it. So for the poor the world over, people who live hand to mouth, the moment something bad happens, things deteriorate. So we want people to have a little emergency fund. Now what would happen if we told people, please hold your regular wallet in your right pocket and hold your saving wallet in your left pocket, right? And just separate the money this way, what do you think would happen? They would spend the money. I mean, if you walk around, even Kibera, you have things to spend. You could buy more water, fruit. There's all kinds of things to buy. So the first principle of designing this system was to make not a wallet that is in your pocket, but to get a wallet that is easy to put money in and hard to get money out. Right? Easy in, hard out. Because if it's easy in, easy out, the money will come in and will go out. If it's easy in, hard out, that might get people to put money in, but not have an easy time getting it out. So we teamed up with M-Pesa, the payment company in Kenya that you all know, and we created a system where people could put money through M-Pesa, very easy through their cell phone, but every night M-Pesa moved the money to an investment bank. And now the money was in an investment bank, and if you want to take it out, you had to take a bus, go to the city, go to the bank, fill a form, wait an hour, take a bus back. It could take you 4 or 5 hours. That's on purpose, right? Why? Because you want people to think about putting money in, but then when they get it out, to get it out only when it's a real emergency. You want people to have access to the money when it's a real emergency, but not have access to the money all the time. So that's the starting point, right? Easy in, hard out, and we gave it to lots and lots of people. And then we said, okay, on top of that, we probably need to give people extra motivation. Right? Like people are not that interested in savings. It's not as if you wake up in the morning and say to yourself, what can I do today to increase my savings? So we said, what other motivations can we give? So some people, we just gave them that system, easy in, hard out. Another group of people, we gave them the same system with a weekly text reminder that said, please try and save 100 shillings, about $1, this week, right? We just reminded them about it. Another group got the same reminder, but it was framed as if it came from their kids. It says, hi mom, hi dad, this is little Joseph, whatever the name of the kid was. We knew the name of their kids. Please save 100 shillings this week for the future of our family, right? Using a little bit of guilt. I'm Jewish. So using a little bit of guilt and reminder of the family. Another group got a 10% match. We said, if you save up to 100 shillings, we'll give you 10% match. Another group got a 20% match, right? More money. 2 other groups also got the match, but they got it together with loss aversion. What's loss aversion? In behavioral economics, we have the sense that gaining money is good, losing money is extra bad. In fact, it's twice as miserable to lose than the joy you get from winning. So if today you lost $1,000, you would be really, really miserable. If you gain $1,000, that will be happy, but the happiness will be about half the size of the misery. Now, if you think about somebody who's putting money in and getting more, they are in the gain frame. We said, how do you get people to feel that they are losing, right? So imagine that you're in the 10% condition, and you put 40 shillings in, you get 4 more at the end of the week. But you gave up 6, but you don't see it. So we said, what if we gave people the 10 shillings in the beginning of the week? Here is your full match. Put as much as you want. And now if you put 40, we leave 4 in and take 6 back. So financially, it's the same thing. But what it gives people is the sense of the money that they're giving up, right? Loss aversion. And then the final condition, we gave people a coin about this size, and we had number made on that coin. Like there were 24 numbers for the 24 weeks of the program. We said, please put that coin somewhere visible in your hut, and every week take a knife and scratch the number for that week. Week 1, I saved, I didn't save. Scratch it this way if you didn't save, this way if you saved. Now think about all of those methods. Nothing, the control condition. Text some kids, 10%, 20%, beginning of the week, end of the week, and the coin. Which one do you think worked the best? Which one do you think worked the best? Now, I'll ask you to vote. Not that your vote will change anything. That's like, but I want you to think carefully about what you think. What's your theory? What's your prediction? And also, please don't abstain. Like, have an opinion. Okay? So how many people think that the regular text worked the best? The regular text. Okay, nobody? Good, it didn't. How many of you think that the text worked at all? That in fact, compared to no text, texting people helped to some degree? Absolutely. It was very effective, just wasn't the best. How many of you think the text from the kids worked the best? Interesting. Usually it's people without kids that think this way. How many of you think that 10% at the end of the week worked the best? Okay, a few. 20% at the end of the week? 10% in the beginning of the week? 20% in the beginning of the week? Okay. And how many people think the coin worked the best? Okay. So here's what happened. You give that system to people and people start saving even with no reminder, right? And that's a good thing, right? It basically says that people want self-control. It's kind of like your program that you think about it, right? That people save up front for the future, right? So you give people a system with self-control and they already want it and start saving. A weekly reminder helped a lot, right? That's great. 10% at the end of the week helped some more. Financial incentives work. 20% at the end of the week, just like 10%. It turns out no difference whatsoever. 10% in the beginning of the week helps some more. Loss aversion works. 20% in the beginning of the week, just like 10%. But the biggest surprise of the, and kids were just like 10 and 20% in the beginning of the week, right? So if you think about having kids, they're worth about 20% plus loss aversion in terms of a motivational force. By the way, this is the amazing thing about kids, right? It's an amazing thing about kids to think that reminding people about kids has the power of 20% match plus loss aversion. It's amazing, right? And I think we don't use kids enough. And I don't mean in the child labor sense. But if you think about motivation, parents are often incredibly motivated about their kids. They represent the future. They represent kind of the better side of ourselves. And thinking about how to use that in persuasion, I think, is very important. But the biggest surprise of this study was the coin. The coin basically doubled savings compared to everything else. And I have to say, it surprised me. Now, you can come up with all kinds of theories about why the coin worked so well, but let me tell you how I came up with this coin. So I was in Soweto, a slum in South Africa, and I was sitting in a place that sells funeral insurance. And if you know South Africa, funerals in South Africa are very, very expensive. People spend sometimes a year or 2 years of income on funerals. It's their biggest celebration of their lifetimes, right? In the West, we have weddings, for example. In South Africa, it's funerals. You could kind of reason which one is more rational to do, but at least with funerals, you have one in your lifetime. So I sit in this place, and they sell funeral insurance, and a father comes, and he buys funeral insurance for a week, right? And just to be clear what it means that it would only be effective if he dies in the next week, right? It only cover him. These are very poor people. They buy small amount of soap and small amount of insurance, and he buys funeral insurance for a week. And what he does then is he takes the certificate of the insurance and in a very ceremonious way gives it to his son. And as he does this, I think to myself, what is this father doing? Now, think about it in a general way. If you're a breadwinner for a family, and one day you decide to take money and direct it to long-term savings or insurance, what is the family going to see tonight? They're going to see less. If you're very poor, they'll see less tonight. There'll be less food on the table tonight. If they're not as poor, there'll be less this week. If they are not as poor, but there'll be something less in the near future. And if you're a breadwinner, when do you get positive reinforcement from your family? When do you do visible stuff? So all of a sudden, we do something that is invisible. And this father, what he was doing is he was saying, it's not that there's less, it's just different. And our coin was trying to do the same thing, right? We asked them to put the coin in somewhere public in the hut. By the way, people don't visit each other's huts. It's just for the family. But it was a coin was visible to basically symbol there's another economic activity happening in the family. It's just less on the table and more here, but it's not that it's invisible. By the way, when you start thinking about it this way, think about the nature of money for a second. 2,000 years ago, how did we save? Basically with goats, right? Goats, chickens, whatever. And the nice thing about saving with goats is you can come home from the office and you could see how many goats your neighbor has, right? And we could compete on who has more goats. We could compete on savings. But then what we did was we invented money, and then we invented digital money, and we took this incredible activity called saving and insurance, and we made it invisible. And then we took another activity called spending and made it extra visible. Now think about this competition. What do we care about? Things that are visible or things that are invisible, right? Of course, with that imbalance, we spend much more and worry less about our future. There was this very sad study recently that showed that when people win the lottery, their neighbors start spending more money. And in fact, some of them spend so much more money that they go bankrupt. Now, I know what you're thinking. These crazy Americans, they will do anything. No, these were Canadians. Good people. Okay. So if you think about this point, there's this asymmetry between spending and saving, visible and invisible, and the question is, how can you solve it? So of course, the coin is one approach. I'll give you two other examples. One example, in the US, there's a saving plan called 401k. You go to a new job, and they ask you how much of your salary do you want to divert to long-term saving, and the company can match a little bit of it. Imagine somebody who makes some money, and now they take a chunk of it and redirect it into long-term saving. That part is going to be invisible to the family. Maybe it will be visible in 30 years from now, but today it will be invisible. What did we do? We asked people to call their significant other and discuss it. The moment you call your significant other and discuss it, it's not visible forever. It's visible for the 3 minutes that you make that decision. And guess what? You discuss it, it's visible, people save more. Another example. Imagine that you take a group of kids on the day that they are born, and you randomly open to half of them college savings accounts. And you put $500 in these college savings accounts. And then you go to visit those kids on their 4th birthday, and what do we find? The kids with college savings accounts have higher cognitive and social skills. How can it be? Do 4-year-old kids know that they have college savings accounts? Of course not. Their parents know. Once a month, the parents get a statement that said, this little kid has a college savings account. And you look at your kid and you say, they're still in diaper, but they already have college savings accounts. And people treat their kids slightly differently, buy them a few more books, read to them a bit more. It's not big steps, but it's over a really long time. With this data, by the way, we recently, last year, we convinced the Israeli government to open college savings accounts for every kid from January 1st, 2017, on the day that they are born. And when we started this project, the people in the Ministry of Finance said, let's just reduce the cost of college. It's not the same thing. It's not the same thing to have a kid that the parents and the kid think of themselves as going to college. Okay, so that's one example of how you want to think not just about the big picture, but the small details. And once you understand the true nature of money, you think about what's visible, what creates attention, what motivates people, what's friction, what's hard behavior. Now we can help people redirect in a much better way. Let me give you another example. We wanted to help people lose some weight. And we said, how do we start? And we said, when you walk around your house, when do you think about your health? What in your house reminds you about health? And the answer is almost nothing. The one exception is the bathroom scale. So we said, okay, let's think about the bathroom scale. By the way, how many of you have bathroom scales? Great. How many of you are looking forward to stepping on those things? Okay. So we said, okay, what do we know about the bathroom scale? The first thing we know, it's a really good thing to step on a scale every morning. Not so good to step in the evening. The reason, by the way, is not that we weigh more in the evening. We do. But what happens if you step on the scale in the morning, you remind yourself that you want to be healthy, and you eat a little bit less for breakfast. If you stand up on it in the evening, you just go to bed and you forget by the morning. Okay, so it's good to step up on the scale every day. The second thing, we know that weight fluctuates a lot. So we talked about loss aversion. In weight, it's gain aversion. You gain 2 pounds, lose 2 pounds. Imagine on average, you don't change your weight. You just up and down, up and down. High misery, slight happiness. High misery, slight happiness. What's the overall average effect? We're not looking forward to this experience. It's mostly bad news. And the third thing we know is that people expect changes to happen very fast. You go on a diet, and you step on this scale, and you say to yourself, I've been on a diet since yesterday morning. I've eaten nothing but salad, and I went for a run, and now look at my weight. Nothing has changed. In fact, it went up. Now what happened is that weight, the behavior, the time where you start changing your behavior to the time it has an effect can be about 10 days to 2 weeks. But we don't have this intuition. So what do? We expect changes. So you've been on a diet for 4 days, you step on the scale and you went up by 0.7 of a pound. And you feel terrible. And then you take a day of break and you have Netflix and cheesecake and you step up on the scale the next day and now your weight goes down. It's confusing and demotivating. So what did we decide to do? We said, let's create a scale with no display. If stepping on the scale is a good thing, let's get people to step on the scale. And if they step on the scale in the morning, let's say, congratulations, you've done your job. And let's give people feedback on an app, but not in terms of pounds. Let's do it in a 5-point feedback. You're just the same. Nothing happened. You're just the same. Congratulations. By the way, in medicine, in health, nothing happened is a really good news, right? You've aged for another year with nothing bad. Congratulations. It's great news. And then we look at the trend. Here is what happened the last 3 weeks. Nothing happened. Slightly worse, slightly better, much better. And it's a running average of the last 3 weeks. And we tested this system. We went to a call center. We took a group of about 1,000 low-income obese people. Some of them got the regular scale, and they gained a little bit of weight every month, about 0.3% of their body weight every month for 5 months. The people who got our scale lost 0.7% of their body weight every month for 5 months. Now think about how beautiful this is. You take this very simple social science approach and you look at daily things like money and wallets and scales, and if you just think about them the right way, you can change behavior. Let me just summarize with the following. If you look at the last, 300 years, a lot of what we have done as humanity is to handle our physical limitations. Think about this amazing auditorium. We have seats, we have stairs, we have lights, we have magnets. I mean, we need heat, we need cooling, and we have all of those things, and we've basically invested a tremendous amount of money and effort and motivation and energy and innovation to basically overcome our physical limitations. We can travel great distances very fast. We can do all kinds of amazing things. What about our cognitive? What about our mental limitations? What about our ability to think about money, our long-term well-being, our happiness, our health? And I think that's kind of the next frontier, and that's where social science and behavioral economics can help. And the good news is that if we just take those approaches, and we even look at the very simple things like money and scale and so on, there's lots of improvements. Thank you very much.